And a very gold afternoon to you. My name is Deep Raja. This is, again, one of the lovely Leica interviews for you. And with me is probably one of the most well-known and amazing gentlemen who I've had the pleasure of speaking to for a long time. Many years in the travel industry, many years in certain construction parts, many years in advertising, many years in hand to everything, being a politician, a former also person in sports, and an excellent all-rounder. If you need to go anywhere, if you need to travel anywhere, this is your gentleman. With me is a person who's now turned that around and become an author. He's decided to write a book known as Follow the Dream, which I will talk to you about. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you, Suresh Kumar.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Deep.
Thank you very much for coming to the Leica Studios. Now, I know that you've written a book that is all about the Asian community and a little bit about people. So tell me, in a nutshell, Follow That Dream. What's it about?
Follow the Dream starts 1947, pre-partition Lahore, where my family was based. And from there, they came into Punjab, India. And then from there, they straddled out to the United Kingdom in 1955. So that's where the history is. And then we go into the 60s and the current generation and thereafter.
So it's basically, it sounds like a book that's generational. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
What prompted you to start that?
I thought it was important to have a record on file, especially as a lot of the grandparents and the parents moved on. They're no longer with us, unfortunately. So memories become diminished and records become unclear. I wanted to have a finite record of circumstances, the family history, the struggles, the trials and tribulations, and hence this book is now where it is.
I want to pick up on that point. You said records become unclear. Why is it so important to keep records? Because let's be honest, when generations change, when generations pass, shall I say, new generations start to have their own ways. And as time goes on, is there really a need for these records?
I believe so, because there is an ongoing generational thing. For example, I'm a child of the 60s. My kids are born thereafter, and it's important for them to know the legacy of the family, what the family went through in establishing their roots in this country that we all call home. And this country has been very welcoming for us. So for them to know that and how things came about and the struggles that the grandparents and the parents faced, it's an important fact of life for them to know.
Do you think that as this book that you've written, do you think that it will help future generations? And if so, how?
I believe so. I think they'll have more value for what the history was and what they have taken for granted. A lot of the newer generations, unfortunately, are rather short-minded, and they don't have appreciation for what their parents went through and the struggles. And I think it's important for them to understand and to relate to those instances where the parents were ridiculed, they were called names, there was racism on a regular basis in the 60s. And I've heard of all these stories through my parents, but they persevered, they struggled on. Why? Because they knew they had a family to support, they knew they have children to educate. They cut out the luxuries out of their lives, the holidays and all that we're now so used to, and they put their head down and got on with it.
You say that a lot of us, or some of the generations, take things for granted.
Yes.
What would you say is the typical thing that perhaps today's generation, maybe your children would say, take for granted, that you know how hard you had to struggle for, or maybe even your parents had to really put up with a lot before they were entitled to whatever it is? What was it they took for granted?
I think the value for money, the respect for your family, the elders, I think it's too much taken for granted now, and they kind of feel it's their right. Uh, when I was growing up as a young kid in the 60s, these things were literally born into us through the parents, that respect your elders, have respect for people's property, and work hard. Don't take anything for granted, and have respect for money.
Would you say your book actually reflects that?
Yes, it covers a lot of instances, and it's a true story. Nothing is fictional in there. It's all true. It's circumstances of life, different situations, different circumstances that we all underwent. It starts, like I said, in 47, comes into the 50s, with my parents coming into Punjab, India. Kitna was our village, a very small village in northern India. And then my father taking the bold step of moving out to England in 1955 on his own with very little money to his name, and then making a success, working day and night. He put his roots down in East London, hence that's where we are all established, and then making sure, very unselfishly, that all his brothers and sisters also had the good life that he was having in London. So he arranged for their passports, he arranged for their visas, the travel formalities, and brought them all over a period of 5-6 years to the United Kingdom.
So, I mean, that's an extremely good story and an incredible
Yes.
achievement, bringing people to the United Kingdom to settle. But the question is, you've put here, follow that dream. What I'm hearing is that sounds like your father's dream. What is your dream?
My dream is the fact that I'm a 60s child. I saw for myself as I was growing up the hardship that my parents were undergoing. I wanted to make sure how I could help them to have a better life. And then thereon, when I started schooling, I reached for the best that life had to offer. I was determined. I was maybe well educated in the fact that my father and mother provided a good education for me, and wanted to make sure that I succeed. So in sports, for example, I was at the top of my game. I played for the district council. I had trials for West Ham when I was 14, 15 years old. I've represented Essex County, Redbridge, and so on and so forth. So I was at the top of my game. Come along when I was 16, I wanted to continue teaching physical education at my school, where I was offered an apprenticeship. But my parents had other things in mind for me for the family business. So I was drafted into the family business at 16. I never looked back. The deal was I'll go in for 3 months during the summer holidays, and then I'll take up my offer that I had from the school. That never materialized because I had the business bug that had bitten. So that's how I got into business, and then thereafter I got into politics, and then I started supporting various charities that we've raised funds for over the years, just giving back to the community, things that I've learned from my parents.
But I mean, I'm going to press you a little bit. What is your dream? Because it sounds like you've done a lot of things and they're remarkable. But what now is your dream? If I was to ask you, this is your book, is your dream to be an author or is it to be something else then?
No, my dream.
Maybe going back to PE?
No. My dream is to tell a story, which I've told. I had an inspiration to write a book when I reached 60. In February, I reached 60, and I've fulfilled that inspiration that I wanted to complete. Now, thereafter, I want to make sure that people take away from the book the lessons that I've learned. There have been highs, there have been lows. We make mistakes, we succeed, we become successful, we make money. All that is covered in the book in one way or another. My dream now is to basically ensure that I live a comfortable and peaceful life. I've done a lot of things I wanted to do over the years, and my children are settled. And I want to help others that might have some inspiration from reading this book.
Very good point and a very good answer there. Just want to move on now. You coming back to your area in politics. Now, you
Yes.
were a person who stood as a councillor. You
Yes.
also stood for MP. Was that right?
Yes.
But unfortunately, you didn't get the seat.
No.
But it was a conservative area.
It was.
Well, a lot of Asians, when they first came to this country, tended to side with a Labour government
That's very
because
true.
they felt that the workers' unions were the ones to do it. How or why did you choose to become a conservative politician, which, let's be honest, okay, is the backbone of British business,
Yeah.
but on the other hand, was known for some time to be not an easy party to break into?
That's a very good point, Deep.
Thank you.
Let me explain. When I was growing up, I could see my parents lining themselves up to the Labour Party. We used to get canvassers coming to the door, mainly from the Labour Party, because Ilford in those days was strongly Labour, and asking for their vote. So when I became of age, 18 or 19, and I had the vote, I was asked by my parents to vote as they were going to vote for the Labour Party, not realizing why and the logistics behind it.
Yes.
So I became a bit wise and started reading up on the paper work that used to be dropped into the letterboxes, the manifests and all that. And then I said, no, Labour Party is not for me. You know, I am more attuned to the policies of the Conservative Party. And in those days, Margaret Thatcher was prime.
Yes.
So I aligned myself up with them. And then in the late 90s, I said, now's the time to take the plunge. Business was on autopilot. And I wrote to John Major, who was then the Prime Minister, and I said, I'd like to get involved in politics. My alignment is to the Conservative Party. How can I help? And there was an election coming along. He kindly wrote back and put me in touch with my local MP, who was Sir Neil Thorne, and he had been a member of Parliament for 3 terms, literally 15 years. And so I got connected with him, and I started supporting them and rallied all the business community together and the ethnic vote and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, Tony Blair had just come into the scene, and Labour had become very popular under him because he was throwing out conservative policies but disguised as Labour policies. So he very cleverly had alignment with the Conservatives, but at the same time was very modernizing and appealing to the electorate. So the Tories obviously had their own issues with infighting going on at the time. So Tony Blair had this landslide victory and got in. I decided to fight only one seat, which was Ilford South. Why? Because I was born in Ilford, I was educated in Ilford, I've lived in Ilford all my life. So I said, I'm only going to run for this one seat, though it was a very strong Labour dominated voting base. So I stood. I wasn't successful, but I learned a lot. I came away with a lot of good contacts that I'd made, and I had the experience of how to run an election and how to aggressively go out and canvass.
Do you think that that reflects in your book? Have you spoken much about it?
I have. I've touched on that. I also became a local councillor where I served Valentine's in Ilford.
Yes.
And it's been a pleasure. You know, I hope I've done good for people. I've always maintained that my reason for joining politics was to give back to the community and this country, because I have so much gratitude that I owe this country, because it's given so much to me, so much opportunity.
Do you think that, that's a very interesting point, the gratitude. Do you think also, I mean, looking at this book, I want to go back to your slightly earlier days, not completely early, but I think the days when you were in travel quite heavily, making a name, and I think a family name in the travel industry. I remember you were quite connected with certain airlines and things. When you get into certain situations like that, and it's not easy, I know, to create a trust within an airline, a trust within a multi-dollar business or whatever. Do you feel that we can still do that today? People in the Asian community can still do that today? Are there opportunities for people to actually get to that level? And does it reflect in your book?
I believe so. I think when we were fortunate to be blessed with a Pan American GSA contract, in the mid-70s, it was unheard of that a small Asian family-run business could do this. But that was all due to the hard work of the family, my father, the parents, and so on. So it's the whole family unit again coming together and making a success of something. And then thereafter maintaining it for a number of years until Pan Am's sad demise in 1992. And they gave us a lot of opportunity. They gave us a lot of trust. Because at the end of the day, we didn't have too much going for ourselves in those days. We didn't have too much money in the mid-70s. We didn't have a fully established track record. But Pan Am, in their analysis of us, were very welcoming and said, no, these young boys are what we're looking for, the determination, the drive, and so on and so forth. So then that led to other things and other contracts and so on and so forth. So we have a lot to be grateful for Pan Am. But if I now bring you up to the current scenario, where we are in, let's say, 2022-23, you now have Rishi Sunak sitting at 10 Downing Street, which 20 years ago would be unheard of. Okay, so that just goes to show there has been a lot of change in this country. They have been very welcoming towards the immigrants, the ethnic communities from India and Pakistan, Bangladesh, for example. But there is more to be done. You know, in Boris Johnson's cabinet, you had 4 or 5 people from ethnic backgrounds, including the to-be prime minister. So I think a lot of good work has been done. It can only get better. And I'm a full supporter of the Conservatives in doing what they've achieved and done for the ethnic communities.
Lovely. I'm going to round this interview up very quickly, but before we go into the last few questions, let's go into the last few questions, because I think it makes a bit of sense. I've seen some excellent pictures of you here, both as a young boy and now as a grown-up gentleman with a married family and everything like that, which is fine. It's showing you the generations and how you changed and how you've developed.
Yes.
But obviously, one of the key things is when we develop, say 20 years ago, there wasn't an internet. There wasn't the ability to perhaps buy a holiday. I'll use the travel example on the internet as it is today. You had to go to people. Now, when you read books, do you feel that people are going to pick up this book and read it, given that the internet is out there? And, people think, well, why should I pick up a book when I've got the internet to read? How would this book, and you, perhaps, through your interviews and meetings, get people to take that book off the shelf? Because it's been a long time since I've seen a kid take a book out of the library,
No, I understand what you're saying. And there's ground for both options. There is a group of people that will go online and search books and read books and Kindle and so on and so forth. But then there's also a group of people that would like to physically hold a book, enjoy it with a cup of coffee or a tea whenever they have time to do so, and enjoy the pleasure that it gives them in holding a book and reading it and so on and so forth. So you have a mix of both worlds there. And I think that majority of them would still love to physically pick up a book off the shelf, Waterstones, for example. The book will be available in Waterstones very soon. It's going to be online.
Yes, I was just going to ask you
on
that.
Amazon.
Yeah,
online on
how
Amazon.
can one get this book?
For the moment, it's on my website, which is www.sureshkumar.co.uk.
Right.
It'll be on Amazon next week, and it'll be on Waterstones very soon.
And what is the price of this?
$12.99.
$12.99.
Yeah.
And this is your first of many, I'm assuming.
It's my first book. I have hinted on a follow-up.
Yeah.
Because the story stops at 2010, and there's a lot to cover in the decade thereafter. So it's not a full story up to date. It like I said, stops at 2010, and there's a lot more to talk about when I start writing.
Absolutely. Suresh Kumar, thank you very, very much for coming on to Leica TV, not only explaining about your book, but explaining the reasons behind the book. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And people out there, if you want to get it, don't forget, you can get it at Waterstones, you can get it at sureshkumar.co.uk. $12.99 is all you need, but I can tell you now, it's an excellent read. I've had a little read of it, and it's got some very, very interesting points in it. And I think that we hope you will have a series 2 very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, by the way, I always like to ask you this. Leica Gold.
Yes.
Now, as you know, I do Drive Time. So tell me, what is your favourite song that I can play for you on my show this afternoon to reflect you?
That's very kind of you. Unfortunately, I would have said Follow That Dream by Elvis Presley, because that goes well with my title. But
I can't put Elvis Presley in.
That's going to be unfortunately not possible.
No.
A bit difficult. So I would go for a Kishore Kumar classic, Zindagi Ka Safar.
Zindagi Ka Safar. Okay, I'll play that and I'll say that to your name. And good luck also. I think you're doing the Crazy for Kishore concert.
Yes.
Are tickets still available?
Yes, they are. Tickets are available.
How can they get those?
They're available on Eventbrite, or they can call the office on 0208-514-5400. And I'm an avid Kishore Kumar fan since I was 6 years old. And I've got to tell you this story. It's in the book. Basically, I'd gone to Odeon Forest Gate to watch a movie. In those days, we had a grocery shop, and we used to get some passes by putting up posters on the windows. And we had 2 passes, so off me and my dad went, and they were showing Aradhana. And the first opening scene of the film is Rajesh Khanna and Sharmila Tagore in the scene singing Mere Sapno Ki Rani. And when I saw that, I instantly fell in love with Rajesh Khanna, and I fell in love with the voice, thinking that Rajesh Khanna is the one who's singing the song. Later, I found out it wasn't Rajesh Khanna singing, but lip syncing, but it was Kishore Kumar who sang the song. So hence, I was then attached to both of them.
So does that mean you're going to be singing at this concert?
I will not be singing, though I love to have a little...
With some lip syncing.
Little sing-song here and there. But we have a wonderful lineup of artists, the top best in the UK, and they'll be singing evergreen hits of Kishore Kumar.
Once again, thank you so much for coming on to Leica TV. Suresh Kumar, I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Deep.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.